In tonight's programme, worthless because of HS2, how an elderly woman can't sell her house to pay for her care because it's been valued at zero. Good evening. An elderly woman who lives close to the proposed HS2 high-speed rail route has been told her house is worthless months after it was valued at £275,000. 97-year-old Elfrida Harper-Tarr needs to sell the property to pay her care home costs. It's located in the village of Toweston near Brackley. The house itself, once the village post office, is 500 metres from where the HS2 line will be built. Too far away to automatically qualify for government compensation, but close enough to worry mortgage lenders. Now, other residents fear for the future of the local housing market, wondering whether they could be stuck in their properties for years. In a moment, we'll be hearing from Buckingham MP John Bercow, but first, this report from James Ingham.
We're just approaching my mother's house. She's been here since 1954, until finally she had to move into a home.
The old post office in Toweston, run and lived in by one woman for more than 50 years. Elfrida Harper-Tarr expected to sell her property to pay her care home bill. But potential buyers have been stopped in their tracks, as a mortgage company says the property is worthless because it's so close to the proposed HS2 line.
Well, it was a total disaster, and my mother, who is 97 years old, is blind, is absolutely devastated and worried stiff about what is going to happen.
This couple from the village were hoping to buy the house, but their bank's decision not to accept it as security for a loan has left them and others struggling to move.
The whole village is really shocked that we are completely blighted. The wording in the valuation covers the whole village, so in theory nobody can get a mortgage to do anything.
Inner cutting on this portion, it effectively will cut off the edge of our playing field. We're blighted, not by just the railway, but by the mortgage providers. And the government, I think, really needs to realise that this is impacting on Toweston and lots of communities up and down the line.
Toweston has long been a sought-after place to live, but HS2 is changing that. Estate agents fear for the future of the village if mortgage companies avoid lending there.
The ramifications are so severe, I think, that unless there is a directive, I think that's what it requires, a directive to lenders, possibly with some sort of government guarantees behind it. But the effect that it's going to have on this community, other communities, is dreadful.
Elfrida's family has applied for compensation from the government's hardship fund, but a payout is far from guaranteed and time is short. She can only pay her care home bills for another 3 months before her money runs out. James Ingham, BBC South Today, Toweston.
Earlier, I spoke to the MP for Buckingham, John Bercow, and asked him what could be done to help Mrs Harper-Tarr.
The short answer to your question is that the Department of Transport needs to agree to the purchase of Mrs Harper-Tarr's property. She is in, frankly, an absolutely appalling situation. This is a lady who lived in the village of Toweston for over 60 years. She's 97 years old and now in a nursing home. She thought she had a buyer for her property, but she's now told the buyer can't buy because the buyer can't get mortgage finance, and the buyer can't get mortgage finance because the property is valued at zero. And that is obviously because of the government's intention to proceed with High Speed 2. Mrs Harper-Tarr will not be in a position to pay nursing home fees for more than a couple of months unless she can realise her asset. And it's been depreciated because of the government's policy. The government needs, with the agreement of High Speed 2, to purchase the property for what she would otherwise have been able to get for it. That needs to happen, and it needs to happen very soon.
Elfrida Harper-Tarr's circumstances are obviously very specific to her and unique to her, but the problem of houses being worthless could apply to other constituents, couldn't it?
Inevitably, if a terrible precedent in this case were to be set, the danger of the knock-on effect is there for all to see. It's no part of my purpose to seek to spread alarm or despondency, and I very much hope that awful eventuality that you describe in your question can be averted. So on both pragmatic and policy grounds and on humanitarian grounds, I would appeal to the government to act and to act soon. I've written to the Secretary of State for Transport, Patrick McLaughlin, to make the case on behalf of my constituent, and he of course will appreciate that as well as applying to her, it could potentially apply significantly more widely. And the government needs to close the issue down by answering my challenge satisfactorily and providing the redress that Mrs. Harper-Tarr and her family need.